Thank you, Jeff. So turkey red wheat is pretty important for the history of hard red winter wheat, kind of around the world. It's pretty important for the history of Kansas, in particular for Mennonites here, and something that my great-grandfather grew, my great-grandparents, I suppose, and a big reason why I'm still farming today. I kind of grew up with turkey red and organic paperwork, because we started doing both at the same time in the 1990s. And it's really very easy to grow. Brandon grew it in the back of his pickup truck for a while. And so it's a type of modern wheat, Triticum estivum, and it has a rich history, rich flavor. I wrote a paper on it that I presented. It's available at turkeyred.org, and you can read a lot of history there. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about today, which is, like Jeff said, direct marketing. I have some inspection experience, so I have some tips there, and just experience from the board. So a little bit about my area, western Kansas. The difference between there and here is, well, there's fewer people, and at this point, there's kind of more cats per square mile than there are people. So let's see. This is kind of the example here. So that's a square mile, and there's just a lot of cats out there. But this is our property. The cats remaining there, that's where my neighbor farms wheat, fallow wheat, and the rest you can kind of see our terraces, and maybe where we were uneven with our plowing that year. We do wheat, fallow, sometimes corn, very little, cane, milo, alfalfa, clover, and we're going to get into buckwheat, even though people tell us it doesn't grow in our area. And here's kind of our crop map for the last year. So we have turkey red and pasture and a little bit of snow white wheat and alfalfa. Those are kind of our main things. So we believe that diversity increases quality, and we're kind of like the small batch growers. So we're trying to have a consistent quality product for our growers, and that really drives our success as direct marketers, I think, too. This is my priorities in a year. Since I started direct marketing, selling wheat has become a year-round thing, small batches of wheat, and right now the wheat is dormant, which is our main crop, so feeding animals is very important. And then in the spring we prep machines and prep storage. And being a winter wheat, harvest happens in the summer, and we plant wheat in the fall. I should mention also, Tim mentioned red fife, which is kind of the Canadian equivalent of turkey red. And I don't know if any of you have heard of Wisconsin number 18, or there's quite a few names. Ulta, Alberta red, Kharkov. Those are all actually names for turkey red, just in different regions, because it was grown in quite a few different places. So a strength of turkey red is that it stools out in the spring quite a bit. So, an important part of weed control is kind of a preventative practice. So that's ground cover. And if you can understand my logic here, you can understand basically any organic rule, I would say. First, you have, this is the weed control rules under the National Organic Program. First, you have to know what you can't do. And so number one there is different practices that are banned under the NOP. Second, you have to have some kind of plan for a preventative or cultural practice. And so for weed control, it's all of those things. And third, there are a few synthetic materials that are allowed if they're on the NOP national list. And for weed control, soap-based herbicides, mulches, if you do previous stuff. So we don't have to do actually the third step because the second step is effective for us. Our big plan right now for our cropland is to fence it all in and let our cattle, bison, horses, and chickens manage like summer fallow or just weeds, and we do a lot of mulching. Don't do any planting, we do some tillage, and we have a diverse crop rotation. And also clean seed too. So after people certify organic, something that they don't always have figured out is how they're going to market. And so I think it's really important that we had a marketing speaker here today. And just whenever you're mentoring someone, it's important to get them to think about marketing after they certify. So this is a chart of when we first certified organic to last year. And when we first started out, we made one sale as organic. Then for, more than a decade, we were selling our crops as non-organic to the local elevator. And Turkey Red, you can sell it as just any other hard-row wheat. So it wasn't really a limit to our market to grow that kind of old wheat. But it didn't really justify our organic certification if we were just thinking about marketing. In 2011, we had one buyer that got Turkey Red listed on the Slow Food Arc of Taste for Seed to Save. And there's a few other things on there that once it got on that list, interest really started to pick up. And then that buyer found other growers to grow it. So we were kind of at a loss. Because of many things, for a few years we didn't have any sales at all. So on this chart you can see the pounds we sold versus the dollars. So you can see the pounds were way up there at the beginning when we were certified, and compared to the dollars we were making, it was very little. But then in about 2013, I graduated college. I came back to the farm, and I decided I'm going to be pretty active in marketing myself. So I put a listing on localharvest.org, which actually shows slow food arc of taste items. And I started just getting calls from people, there's random people all over the country, and I started accommodating them. So very slowly, interest started to build in this wheat until about 2015, it's really started to pick up, where now some people are growing 200 acres plus of Turkey Red, and I don't know how they're really going to find a market, but I do know some people who are asking for semi-loads at a time, maybe twice a year. And the dollars have gone up with the pounds that I've sold, past what we were selling when we were selling semi-loads. So it's a really interesting chart. But when I talk to people who are certified organic, I try to make them realize that just because you're organic or raising something that's unique, that has a lot of interest building, that doesn't mean you're going to make any sales. It takes a lot of burning shoe rubber, and I would agree that it does take a lot of your time. So you really have to be kind of a people person. Or decide what kind of extra work am I going to do that someone else has been doing, that I've been paying someone else to do, like marketing, like seed cleaning, like transportation. One of the guys we've given Turkey Red to in Illinois, an OCIA member, he is milling this wheat, growing it, and he's doing like baking classes. So he's almost closing the loop on all of the things that other people are doing, and it saves, well, he gets more of the money himself that way. And that's an example that I've seen as we've sent this wheat across the country. This is a map of where turkey red used to be grown in 1919. It was 99% of hard red winter wheat in this country. So it's very adaptable, and there's a lot of opportunity for people who want to get into direct marketing, especially if they're close to cities. So if they're close to cities, that cuts out one of the biggest costs that is hard to deal with otherwise, and that is transportation. So if you ship 20 pounds of wheat through the USPS, it's going to cost you about $20. And that's usually worth more than what anyone's going to charge for the wheat. So people usually figure in the transportation cost. We do a lot of direct transportation to the Front Range of Colorado. It's about 300 miles, but we don't charge anyone for it. We figure that into our cost of production and our price. So there's this thing called parity. Probably an UFO person would know what that is. I don't know if any of the others in here know. Maybe a few. Okay, so
define it, please.
So it's the cost of production while making a reasonable profit. So right now the National Farmers Union figures the cost of production. Oh, it's about 30 cents per pound, or maybe $18 a bushel. But a non-organic guy might get, I don't know, 8 cents per pound, or $3.50 a bushel at our local elevator. We ask 45 cents a pound, or $27 a bushel for our wheat. And some of our customers actually say, you're undercharging, raise your prices. But that's not really our philosophy. We don't want to overcharge, because we want this to be available for people. It's a staple food, and to make it part of the local food movement, it needs to be affordable. There's some people who charge like $6 a pound or more, and that's, I think, too much. So let's see, a kind of weakness to turkey red that made it go out of favor with people in the middle of the last century was it does get really tall. So like there's a picture of me in your handout next to this wheat. I have a yardstick, so it's more than 3 feet tall in western Kansas where it's dry. If you grew it in eastern Kansas, someone actually did, and yeah, it's pretty tall. So someone grew it in Maine, pretty tall. And when they really started to use synthetic fertilizers after World War II, then it kind of makes things lodge when wheat would lodge. So they developed semi-dwarf wheat, the short wheat, and that made we put a lot more energy into the seed head, increase the yield. So that's kind of the summary of wheat breeding improvements that made turkey red fall out of favor in the last century. But then my farmer customers say, well, they feel like they're kind of on a treadmill. There's always a better, newer variety out there, and the prices aren't really matching with the cost for seed or just all of the different costs that they're seeing. So I've sold to quite a few farmers who maybe just want to raise it for themselves to eat it, or they are developing markets in different areas, especially around Minnesota and Illinois, Colorado. Those are probably some of the biggest where they, as like the previous map here, that's kind of where it used to be grown quite a bit. And I've been criticized for making this wheat available to other farmers because it's like I'm giving crop to or seed to my competition. But I think that they're going to have a product that can be unique to their region if they really get into the direct marketing. And because I think that flavor comes from the soil and quality comes from the soil, because we use an alfalfa rotation, I think that adds some other kind of flavor element to my wheat, where some of my baker customers are commenting on it, like it has a cinnamon aroma. I don't know. That's something I'm really focused on learning about from my baker customers. So success, direct marketing, I would say it really is hands-on, and it does depend on your location and people skills. My dad kept growing turkey wheat even when no one cared, because he says he just liked the way it looked. It was a tall wheat, waves of grain is not part of our state song here. Looks like a sea maybe when it waves in the wind. So, but he didn't want to be the only one growing it. So he started making it available to other farmers. And in a way, we're seeing some success reaching kind of our mission of just making this wheat available to other people because of how far it's gone so far. And it's up to them, once they get it, to develop their own direct market. So that's the turkey red aspect that I really wanted to cover. Another thing that I'm developing as an inspector is kind of a cheat sheet for when it comes to an audit part of an inspection. I think people have a lot of trouble recognizing that there's two parts of an audit. There's the traceability part and an inventory balance. And so I have a couple of sheets here that I'm working on that anyone can take. I do grain inspections, so that's what it's focused on. And so I ask people, what is the last document available for a sale? That's like the first question I ask for a traceability audit. And then I just go back in time from there, all the way back to the seed. And there's documents along the way that I'll be looking for as links in the chain. And if there's a gap between, you got an invoice and or a statement from a buyer, and it doesn't show where it was stored, or the transportation documents, no reference to that. That's a break in the audit trail, and that's an issue that I'd have to note as an inspector. So I think it's important for people to think about a template for all the kinds of things that make up your audit trail. It'll be different for every farm, but you can take one of these sheets and kind of think about your own audit trail that way. For the traceability, the inventory balance, the kind of things that I look for there are bigger numbers, like what's the area planted, what's the total harvest, what's the total sold, what's the total left in storage. So it's like adding and then you subtract. And if there's more sold than what you had harvested, that might be a question. Where did that extra number come from? So, and sometimes there's an explanation, like shrinkage, like I don't know. I've just heard a lot of good explanations that make sense for why there's a discrepancy. And I've been told by some certifiers, you have to allow for a variance. A small percent, but you can allow for a little variance, because sometimes people are just estimating in their trucks what they put into a bin. So that's what I want to talk about today. Any questions?
Demetria, you mentioned like 20 towns. What is your average, sale?
Sale.
Amount? I mean, you're talking semi-loads, then you're talking 20 pounds.
Yeah.
Everything
So,
in between there?
yeah, like we sold 800 pounds to one buyer. We sell some USPS. Or on average, probably it's about 5 bushels or so to bakers. A problem that the bakers have, they don't have a lot of storage space. But they are getting their own mills, so they are cutting costs too. They're cutting another part of the infrastructure, or there's just no infrastructure there for local markets for grains. So they are taking on the responsibility of milling in their own bakery.
So are you marketing in like any farmers market type situations?
No, there are none around my place, so. So my community is kind of extended to about 300 miles away. You know,
Just you and the cats, right?
yeah, pretty much. My dad's there too. You know?
What kind of average yields do you get?
Well, we try not to think about yield so much because we're thinking about dollars per acre. But it's pretty consistent at 20. We see, probably 5 to 50 in our area just with turkey red. On average, our county average is probably 40 or 50 bushels to the acre.
What mulch did you use for vegetable?
So we're mulching what we call a natural cover crop, and that's just kinds of plants that grow in a field in a particular year. We don't plant them, they just come up on their own.
And roll them down then?
Yeah, well, not with like a roller crimper, it's like a stalk chopper. Like, yeah.
Then are you working that soil before planting and?
Yeah, so this don't have no-till yet, but this last year we mulched once and then disked and swept, rotary hoe. It was kind of a mat this year with the mulch and very dry too. So.
And then there's a year of fallow before that, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
You don't seed your fallow down, you don't seed a crop or fallow, whatever comes down.
Right, yeah. So what's out there is like kochia, some pigweed, mustard, foxtail millet.
Probably some volunteer weed comes back too.
A little bit, yeah. But the weeds kind of smother that out, really. But we bale a lot of just whatever grows out there. Foxtail millet's a good hay crop, we think.
So do you bag this stuff yourself?
Yes.
So what do you use, paper bags or?
We use a polypropylene sandbag, basically, because I didn't want to get into like a bagging machine, and that way I can have my customers that are bakers that I'm dealing with a lot, return them, I give them a bag discount.
Okay. So how do you close them up so that?
It has like a little tie on it, and I just make a bow.
Okay.
Now you're cleaning all of your crop. You're running it through a ring cleaner
Not all at once, but like maybe 200 bushels at a time through a disc cleaner.
I see.
Yeah, or like a barrel cleaner first as a scalping disc cleaner. We have little clipper screen cleaners. We've tried a lot of different things, but we were lucky enough to get an old, I think it's a 1920s disc cleaner, and that does a really good job for us. I know some people use gravity tables, and there's all kinds of things. You can get color sorters, but those are a little out of our price range. Indent cleaners. Let's see, I saw Jackie first.
Would you or the bakers say that it's a good whole wheat, makes a good whole wheat product? fully credits are?
Yes, so turkey red, people say it kind of makes it dense loaf. They use it a lot for sourdough. And the people who have mild gluten sensitivity issues, for whatever reason, they say they can eat this wheat and maybe more as sourdough. So, but my customers also are big into whole wheat. They're just, think it's healthier, or they like a rich flavor for certain recipes.
I guess my question is, what's baked wheat is used most?
Yes, it is common bread wheat, so that's the main thing that it's used for. And probably with any kind of direct marketing thing, you have to really figure out what is the best use for this end product. So with like buckwheat, noodles, soba noodles, or they use it for pancakes. But people are experimenting too. So like people have used turkey red for noodles, and it just makes a heavier tasting noodle. Doesn't really hold together very well though.
Protein? Is that good protein?
I don't know if it's inherently better or worse. We see on our fallow ground maybe 9 protein. After alfalfa, it's up to 16, like the first year after alfalfa. Maybe a couple years after, it's down to 13. Kind of depends on the year too, but we see that our rotation and the year, the moisture, so many things. But we just use our growing practices as the guide. Manure probably is like 10 for us. Putting manure down, really light manure.
What, do you have, any irrigated, or is it all dry land?
All dry land.
All dry.
Yeah, if this was irrigated, it probably would go down. Yeah.
In trouble with washing as it goes so far?
Well, because we're dry land, we only get about 15 to 18 inches of moisture every year, so maybe in a really wet year and in the terrace channels, that's what we have out there, it will go down a little bit, but we don't see that as a problem just because if you cut into the head still, it kind of springs back up a little bit, not really flat on the ground. No.